Hello and welcome to the season preview of the 1912 Exiles podcast. Joining me this evening, we've got the doctors in the house, Ed Bridges.
Good evening.
And we've got our resident poet, Ian Street.
Hi Rhys, hi Ed.
So it's been a busy few months. We've had quite a few specials over the summer. Thank you to everyone who's been involved with them. And also want to say a quick thank you to all of our monthly Ko-Fi subscribers. That's Surrey Exile, Blairinho, Dr. Bad Vibe, Girl Saturday, Neil, Tutor Wales, Ben, Josh, Billy Punk, Hooligan, Mark, Daniel and Hamid. So as you will all have noticed, we have quite a lot of new players. No doubt you've lost track of which person between the ages of 22 and 24 we have signed and where we have signed them from. Most are academy graduates from bigger clubs and they've all been given shiny new 2-year deals. To give us a bit of help, we asked Jamie to send us a voiceover from his holiday to explain the new look squad for the uninitiated. Over to Jamie, live from his sauna in Finland.
Welcome to your whistle-stop whirlwind tour of Newport County's summer break, brought to you by the 1912 Exiles podcast in association with Bovril and Oregano, the connoisseur's choice. I'll attempt to wrap up all of the goings-on quicker than you can say a 23-year-old signing on a 2-year deal. This summer marked the first off-season under the stewardship of Hugh Jenkins, who took over the running of the club in January. With the results as they were, most managers would feel insecure, and while public backing suggested Graham Cochran would stay, in mid-June we saw him and the club part ways. While things were looking uncertain, Jenkins stated he was looking for a head coach rather than a manager. This became more evident when Newport began signing a host of players in the weeks before Nelson Jardim was appointed head coach. The recruitment process has seen a clear mantra: just sign players largely with youth on their side but with game time experience. So out went club stalwart Scott Bennett, who has joined Michael Flynn at Cheltenham, and other regulars from last season such as Ryan Delaney, Omar Bogle and Harry Charsley. Sansana, Waite, Drysdale, as well as Sam Bowen, Joe Day, Harrison Bright and Johnny Maxted complete the released list. The club have also held on to last season's top scorer Will Evans, for now at least. They have batted away a number of offers, we're told. It'll be a long wait until the end of August to see if he will remain a Newport player. So, who have we signed? Jacob Carney signed as a backup goalkeeper to Nick Townsend. The 23-year-old has joined from Sunderland, having been on the books in the Manchester United Academy. Kieran Brennan is a centre-half, signed from Sheffield Wednesday. He's 24, spent time on loan at Swindon, and is known as a ball-playing, technical defender, comfortable stepping into midfield. We're told he's got plenty of potential under the right manager. 24-year-old left-back Anthony Glennon signed from Grimsby. From what we've heard from Mariners fans, he had looked just as good attacking as defending, chipping in with plenty of assists where a wing-back position might favour him a bit more. Joe Thomas is a 22-year-old right-back, originally from the Swansea Academy. He formed part of Newport's raid of the Welsh Leagues, having spent last season at Cambrian and Clydach in the Cymru South. He's known for his attacking prowess, having scored a hat-trick from right-back. Cameron Evans has joined from non-league Taunton. He's also come through the ranks at Swansea and gained playing time in Ireland and plays across the back. One familiar face among the list is Matt Countryfile Baker, who signed on a permanent deal from Stoke after 2 loan spells at Rodney Parade. Despite his age, the Welsh under-21 international feels like one of our more senior players given his game time in a back three and also in midfield. Kai Whitmore is another of the Welsh contingent, the 23-year-old signing from Haverfordwest. This one feels like a box-to-box midfielder, all action, who can put in a good tackle and a decent pass. Given our issues in midfield last season, he could be a useful signing. Cameron Antwick, the midfielder, comes from down the road in Cardiff with plenty of hype and potential. With a keen eye on set pieces, he's one to keep an eye on for sure. Michael Spellman is a left winger signed from Sunderland. The 21-year-old plays out wide, which gives an indication of the sort of playing style we might come to expect this season. Some Sunderland fans said he looked promising and had quality in front of goal. 24-year-old Oliver Greaves has joined from non-league Mickleover, having come through the youth ranks at Sheffield United before injury ended his time there. He spent time at Barrow and Dover, and he got 24 goals last season. And our 10th signing today is the exception to the 22 to 25-year-old rule, which is the return of striker Courtney Baker-Richardson, who returned to help provide some experience up top. He formed an excellent foil for Dom Telford a few years ago and chipped in with goals himself. So there you have it. How might we shape up, if anyone's guess? We seem to have reverted to 4 at the back in pre-season in either a 4-3-3 or a 4-2-3-1 setup, with passing with purpose. Back to the boys in the studio.
So, we'll start with you, Ed, because you came off mute first. Which of the new squad are you most excited about?
I'm not going to surprise anyone here. From the friendly that I saw at Barry and the bits that I have seen in other places and stuff that I've read from people whose opinion I trust, I think this lad Anthony Glennon at left wing back seems to be the one who is justifiably getting all the praise. I think, he's like all the players pre-season, he's had his ups and downs, but I think he looks like the one who's going to be a really good outlet. We talked before about how last season the wing-backs were hugely important to our style of play. Although we may line up a little bit differently this season, I still think you need that creativity from out wide, and he looks as though he is the man who is going to provide it. And he looks very cool as well, I thought, for the away kit launch, with he's got a very 90s kind of haircut that really worked with the retro shirt, and he looks like a good guy. So he is probably my pick. The other one I do like the look of is Cameron Antwi. I think I said in the match diary at Barry, he's the sort of player who tries to do the thing that isn't the obvious thing, and sometimes it comes off and sometimes it doesn't, but he's the sort of player who's always trying to make something happen, and I like that. So I think he's one who may take a little bit longer to get completely up and running, but I'm excited about him. So those are probably my 2 picks out of the crop so far.
Ian, have you managed to form an opinion on any of our new signings yet, or is it all hearsay and conjecture?
It's all hearsay and conjecture. As you can imagine, I don't pay any attention to the pre-seasons, and I never go and see him, apart from last year when he played in Sheffield. So if he would have been up here, I might have wandered down. But yeah, I haven't seen him. So going on purely on conjecture. It's interesting what Ed says about Glennon, because my mate Grimsby Steve obviously knows him pretty well, and he always said at the start, I think the Grimsby Pods did is good going forward. The challenge could be if other teams get at him, so that will be interesting to see how that pans out over the season, and what cover he gets. How we're going to line up. I agree with Antwi at some point. I think can he develop? He looks he potentially could be good. The 2 I guess that I'm interested in are Kai Whitmore. So looking forward to seeing how he sort of pans out coming across. Many people who know more about football than I do were talking about him last year as one to look out from the Welsh League. So I'd be interested to see him. And also I've stuck some money down on him with the Rose Eds. We're sponsoring his kit this year. So, I'm definitely watching him. And the other one is Spellman, the winger or left-sided attacking forward. He quite excites me, so I'll be interested to see how he develops over the year. I think we might be saying this quite a lot today. I think it's how these players develop, isn't it? I'm not sure any of them are the finished article. So Jenks has not taken a punt. There's clearly a strategy to this. It's going to be really interesting. So I'm sure we'll want to talk about how that's going to pan out.
Is there any way you think we're still short, Ian, on the basis of what you've seen and what you've read?
Are we a bit shallow in terms of gritty lead to experience? So with the fixture changes that are being made, what is his team going to be like? Away to Bradford on a Monday night, against hardened League Two experienced players in that sort of game, and even like at Cheltenham on the opening day against the Newport Vets team, the likes of, is it Harry Pell and stuff like that they've signed, there's some real grizzled players around at this level, as we know, isn't there? And as we stand at the moment, we don't know if any more are going to come in. As we stand at the moment, if the likes of your Clark, Morris, but if they get in Wildig, if they get injured, we look a bit light from an experience perspective. So I would love us to have another centre-back and a ball-winning midfielder who actually know what they're doing at this level, because the rest, there's a lot of untried stuff there. I think a lot will be made about the lack of experience. I think Rhys has made a good point on our chat that actually, when you look at Clark and Jameson and Macca and Morris, Wildig, they've all got actually decent experience at this level. So if that is a decent core, and then you've got the younger players around it who aren't really, really young, they're 22, 23, 24. So I think I can see what Jenks is doing here, and I can see the strategy behind it. I still think personally we're a little bit light in that, a couple of players like Macca or Morris of that level of experience I'd like to see brought in, but I'm not sure that's going to happen, is it?
Yeah, the problem with finding players that have 150, 200 League Two appearances is you pay more for them because they're proven at that level. And I don't know whether it's that we can't afford that, or whether that we have this philosophy that we're sticking to now, to sign players of a certain age. I quite like it, and we may come onto it later, but you've both picked out the two players that I'm quite interested in, based on conjecture as well. I quite like Whitmore and Antwi, based purely off the reviews that we got from people when they came in, and from people who've watched the pre-season. So I'm excited to see what they can do. And like Ian said, there's an opportunity for a lot of these players to prove themselves at this level and set the storyline for the rest of their careers, because they're in that prime age range now to do that. So we've had almost a full bank now of pre-season performances. How important do you think that the performances and the results are? My personal opinion is that you need kind of a mix of both. If you look like a disaster, then you should be worried. But a lot of it is about building fitness, trying combinations. It's a new manager. He may not know what players' best positions are yet and what his best combinations are. So admittedly, I've not seen any of the pre-season performances, but I do tend to take them with a little pinch of salt. Ed, I'll throw it over to you because I know you have some strong opinions on this one.
Something I've really been thinking about the last few days, because on the weekend after that defeat at Kidderminster, I put a tweet up that I thought was very like hedging your bets, middle of the road, balanced thing, basically saying it's only pre-season, results don't really matter. The key thing is that the team and the coaches can try things out and learn from what works and what doesn't. But even allowing for that, it doesn't feel as though this is a team that's kind of about to storm the league, which, I thought that was pretty milquetoast by our standards, But what I thought was interesting was we got a lot of responses to that, either from people who said, you're being kind of blindly optimistic, of course the results matter and you're being way too complacent. Or we had responses from people saying, don't talk rubbish, results aren't important at all, this is a team that's really starting to come together, stop being so negative about everything. And I just thought that really tells a story of basically you can project onto our pre-season results and performances whatever you want, really. We've experimented a huge amount. We have been basically changing the entire team at half-time. I also think it's really interesting and significant that we haven't put out, as far as I can tell, our strongest 11 on the pitch at the same time at any stage. We've been trying different partnerships, different formations, and we've had a kind of a mixed bag in each half, kind of half chips, half rice. Some people who are going to be starters, some people who are going to be on the bench. I think it's going to be Saturday at Hereford before we get a sense of what actually Nelson Jardim's first 11 is going to be. And it's only really at that point that you can start to make any significant judgments.
A couple of seasons ago, we drew to Dundee and lost all but one of our pre-season games, and we went to the playoff final and were the better team in that game. So, we were one ropey penalty away from being in League One that season after an awful pre-season. So I don't think you can make too much of it. Is that... I know, Ian, you don't really care about the pre-season, but is that your sentiment as well?
Yeah, I've been reflecting on this a little bit. Obviously, I'm slightly older than maybe some of the people who post on Twitter or whatever about pre-season stuff. I'm just about to go into my 44th season, I think, watching us. And, for the vast majority of that time, you would have barely even known what the pre-season schedule was. And I think that was better because you need to be able to try things out to a certain extent, almost away from the public eye, which is partly why some of the games we have are behind closed doors, aren't they, against both the Bristol clubs, It's a really weird sort of thing for me to sort of view on from, my sort of aged perch in the old oak tree. It is a bit weird, I find, because so I saw one of the games that I think we looked a bit lethargic, right? Okay. They might have had the most intense 2-hour session before they went on the pitch with the purposely idea of running a team tired to see how they react to that. There's all sorts of things that managers and coaching staff look to try out, isn't there? And if you look around other clubs, I don't pay too much attention. I've seen all sorts of bizarre results in pre-season. So it's like, we'll have a look 10 games into the season and then we'll have a look and see where we're doing. It didn't bother me in the slightest whether we win them all or lose them all. That's literally irrelevant until you start actually playing competitive football.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So when we are looking at this season coming, obviously we've had a bit more time to reflect on the tenure of Nelson Jardim. What are we excited about for kind of this new era based on what we've seen so far? Personally, I'm excited for the return of wingers, not just the one odd winger that Mike Flynn would sign and never play, but actual wingers on the pitch. Ian, anything from you? We'll start.
Well, I guess he seems a fairly level-headed guy, doesn't he? From the sort of, I can only go on, the media stuff that we're seeing. Come the depths of the season when we're losing 4-0 at home, when the Hazel Terrace is on his back, he might have a bit of a different state to him. But, he seems like a thoughtful guy. There's lots of positive noise coming out about the way he works. I still think the appointment that came about was a bit weird, but whatever. I absolutely wish him all the best. We're trying something different here, which I'll probably come on to talk a bit more later on. And I am just interested in how that's going to shape up. But it's not going to be, it's not going to be brilliant necessarily at Cheltenham. Who knows? But, as we cross through this season and bring some of these players on and through, and I think it is going to be interesting. I'm expecting the ball to be on the deck a bit more. I'm expecting them to be a bit more variety and fluidity of sort of formations and the way the players might move. I know I got a report back from one of the games where they were saying, the midfielders were interchanging. There were people dropping for the ball. It wasn't passing for passing's sake, as sometimes passing football can be. They were looking for insights, looking to move the ball forward and pass between the lines. Now, stuff like that is like really interesting, isn't it? And I'm with you, Rhys. I don't know if we are going to play wingers. I'm interested to see if we do this 4-2-3-1. So you might have sort of wide-ish players, but with more sort of license to move around that, a lot like a front four sort of thing. We pretty much knew every game last season. 5-3-2, here we go, isn't it? So we don't know yet, do we? I think there's going to be all sorts of interesting things to look at. The tactics truck needs to pump its tires up because I think it's going to be some interesting stuff going on. So, and I'm looking forward to all of that. Yeah, definitely.
I'd agree. I'm also looking forward to perhaps seeing a little bit more football being played on the deck than we have over the last few seasons. I think we've talked before about how well Graham Copeland did to come in and steady the ship when he did, but his approach to football and the tactics that he employed, whilst necessary, did also kind of turn a lot of people off. I'm thinking of people like Martin, who used to come on the pod and give us, tactical insights, but who I think, decided that style of football wasn't for him and hasn't been to that many games in recent years as a result. So yeah, like Ian, I'm looking forward to seeing what Plan A under Nelson Jardim looks like. We'll come on later to talk about what Plan B might be, because I think that's where it starts to get a bit sticky and a bit interesting. But yeah, Plan A of keep it on the deck, play exciting, fluid football with a young and ambitious group of players. Great, I'm all for that. Looking forward to it.
I said I'm excited for the return of wingers. That'll suit someone like Caban Rai as well, a little bit more than kind of being forced into playing as a striker, which maybe isn't his natural position. We talk about square pegs in round holes, but Lewis Collins was forced to be a striker when he wasn't for years, and it probably hampered his development somewhat. So yeah, I'm interested to see how we get on. I think if we have this exciting interchange of players, people making runs from deep, incisive passing, which we often missed last season, particularly when Wildick wasn't in the team. I'm excited to see some more aesthetically pleasing football, shall we say. So we'll return to the new shirts. I quite like them. The home kit is nice. It doesn't have a proper collar, but I like what they've done with the pattern behind it. kind of embedded in the shirt, and I did enjoy the retro trailer for the away shirt. That was
that was great. I really
entertaining.
Really enjoyed that, and I also think like fair play to the players for getting involved in that, because having to dress up in like old shell suits, and they had was it Jameson in like dungarees and stuff. They would have been well within their rights to have said, no, sorry, that's not in my contract, I'll not do that. But they did it. They looked great. It was the whole thing, the concept, the way it was all filmed. It was all like spot on. They really did nail the brief with that, I thought. And
they all looked like they were having a great time as well. I think they were enjoying their moment of acting.
No, it's superb. And a great shirt as well, I think, that away shirt. My slight quibble, and this is super minor, but I'm not the only person to have said it, because the colour scheme of that is great with the white and the amber. Looks really effective. Why on earth the people from Alpha, who are the sponsors, didn't say, yeah, that's fine, change our logo so that it's in the same colour scheme, so it's all complementary. They're missing a trick there, because they're like red and blue or whatever it is, just like it jars against the rest of the colour scheme, and you think, that's the one thing that I think would have made it perfect if the lettering of their logo was also in the same colour scheme as the rest of the kit.
I wonder if they were asked. They probably don't offer that up, I wouldn't have thought. I think it's up to the club probably to go, is there any chance you consider that? And they can then say yay or nay, can't they? My problem with that kit, so obviously I went through all the 90s stuff. When it originally came out, all this like geometric pattern stuff, so I never liked the originals. So we're having a nostalgia to a period that I thought was bobbins. However, having said that, they've done it well, I think. But yeah, the 90s kits to me, retroing to something I thought was rubbish in the first place, don't really do it for me.
Yeah, you see, that for me, that's my era, and I guess Rhys's as well, the tail end of that decade. So I'm all for it. But I think that's the great thing. You do a retro shirt, it inevitably is going to leave some people cold, but some people
they've done it well. They've done it well for what it is. They've done it well for what it is.
And we've still got a third shirt to come.
Have we? Is it going to happen?
I assume so.
Hope it's not blue like last year's.
Last year's was black.
We had the MND shirt, didn't we? That was blue.
Oh yeah, that was the fourth. I mean, we'll probably have a fourth like charity special kit at some point as well. Here it is. This is where like Ian's head's just going to explode, isn't it?
Just like stop it now.
Moving on to another of the many changes, kind of not only in the foreground of the club but in the background of the club this season, is the new trust. And I've got to kind of tip my hat to them here and say that their communication early on has been outstanding, where they've delivered regular updates whenever there's something to share. And I think that was a big criticism of the trust in its previous guys, and when it was running the club, is that we didn't really have any idea what was going on apart from the very vague updates we used to get. So that's my personal opinion, but what have you guys made of the trust comms so far?
I'd echo all of that. And what I like about it as well, it's not too much waffle. It's that you haven't got loads to say. You've got a few things to say. Just say the few things you need to say and a few bullet points. You don't need to write War and Peace about what's going on. It's like, that's fine. Well, I'm happy with that. And there's some really interesting stuff in there. Like, for example, they're talking about potentially having, screening the get-togethers, aren't they? And I think that the new, are they a board? Are they whatever they are? I think they've hit the ground running. They started well, and I think there's an awful lot going on behind the scenes, both with them and with the wider club, which I think are really positive. And that bricks are being put in place for a foundation for a new club, and I think that's really positive. Yeah.
So, news from last season's community club that we focused on last season. Our season tickets this season are able to go to Newport City games for free, and their season ticket holders get to come to one of our games. What do you make of that move, building bridges between kind of our Welsh League clubs, local clubs?
I think it's great, really good. I thought that was a really nice thing to do. Newport City, I think, we should get a few extra fans through the door as a result. And I don't think there's going to be suddenly hundreds of Newport City fans making a stampede across the Rodney Parade who wouldn't have otherwise gone. But I think we should be building those links. And yeah, Newport City, I think, have had a good start to their season in the Cymru South. So that's great to see. I think the more we can do of that, the better. I was out last night at Chepstow Town, they who are our club in focus, local club in focus for this season. Beautiful, stunning, sunny night. Barbecues going, big crowd for the A48 derby against Caldecott, which the away side won. But really good night out. I'm looking forward to another trip up to Larkfield Park at some point soon. And I think, the more links that Newport County can make with teams in the local area, the better. And I think, it is partly also up to those local teams to sort of lean into that a bit. I'm pretty sure Merthyr in the past have said, Newport County season ticket holders can get kind of reduced entry to games at Penydarren Park and stuff. So I think all of that is grist to everyone's mill, especially because, as we've said before, so many of Newport County's away games this season are chuffing miles away in the north of England, which is good news for Ian. But for those of us who've got like Saturday morning commitments, actually being able to go and watch a game in the Cymru Leagues on a Saturday afternoon to scratch the itch is good news. So I thought really good to see, and more of that. I think is great.
I know that listening to the Chepstow piece, they haven't got the women's team that we wanted to have a look and a focus on. So what do we want to put another shout out now to sort of say, look, if there's a local women's team who'd like us to be our sort of women's local focus, let's get that out there.
Yeah, good shout. We'll do that. And if we don't hear from anyone, then I think we might just go and watch Goitra women, because I think a lot of the Newport City women players from last season have kind of decamped en masse up to there. So that's kind of plan B.
Okay, on that note, we will take a quick break for a word from our sponsors. So we'll move on to some quick fire questions. Thank you to those of you who sent them in. I think we've covered the first one already. Jamie Phillips, out of all the new signings, who has stood out the most in the pre-season games?
Yeah, I think Glennon and Antwi were definitely the picks. I've seen other good reports. I think, Kai Whitmore is one who, again, it might take him a little while to warm up, but apparently he's shown some good flashes of genius. It's about how well they can hit the ground running.
Okay, our next question is from Carl. What is our budget this year? Only Hugh Jenkins can answer. I would say not the biggest in the league, but not the smallest in the league.
Yeah, that seems about right. I suspect it's a tiny bit more generous than last year, but I think it's about doing more with it and making it go further for us, which is why, we're signing up-and-coming young players who are hungry. Is that your sense too, Ian?
Yeah, and I think there's a point to be made here that I think if people thought that, Jenkins never said he was going to come in and splash the cash, did he ever? So I do think, we need to temper any sort of expectations that was going to happen. I still think some of the fan base still think that, and I never have done. I think he's been really clear about that. This is now the start, without trying to nick Coco's analogy of, walk, crawl, walk, run. This is the start of the next phase, isn't it? I'm not expecting us to storm the league or do any of those things, but I think this is the start of going, right, we might sell one of these players and bring a bit of revenue in. And it starts that process of becoming more sustainable, looking at different ways of bringing money in, all of that sort of stuff that we maybe haven't utilised as best as we could in the past. For me, this is where this starts. There's a strategy, there's a plan, there's a long-term, or at least a medium-term vision of what we're trying to do. Whatever the budget is, and we'll be right down the lower end, I suspect. That sort of planning and thinking is going on in a way that maybe it hasn't in the past, where we've been a little bit knee-jerk reaction. It feels to me that there's more thinking going on, more planning going on, more strategy going on. And that's the sort of thing that we need to, if we're ever going to develop and move on, that's what we need, isn't it? And I'm excited about that. There's going to be bumps in the road, but that's a good thing. And I think our budget will slowly grow as we move down that strategic path of developing the club.
I guess as well that there's experience of doing that exact thing from Jenkins as well, which, as much as the hard work of the previous board was put in, none of them had any experience of taking a club from the brink of the conference, like Swansea were, all the way through to the top tier of English football. I don't necessarily think that will be replicated by Newport County, but I think there's experience of how successful clubs operate and how to make things work. And, Swansea didn't have the biggest budgets around when they started their journey. They made some very shrewd appointments with their managers, very shrewd signings. And I think if we can replicate that in a small scale, we'll be well on our way to kind of being a sustainable club. So the next question is probably going to be Ian's favourite. Describe our pre-season only using cheese as an analogy. I'll start with you, Ian, because you had a cheese that I never heard of on Twitter.
This is the greatest cheese in the world, right? That's where I'm starting with it. So Cabrales, right, which is from the sort of mountain caves of Asturias in northern Spain. So Cabrales, pungent and a bit smelly, and formed in places that no one knows, but left to mature could become seriously strong.
Very good.
That is excellent. I went a bit more basic with mine, just Emmental, pretty good in the right situation, but still a few holes.
I'll say Feta crumbles under a little bit of pressure.
It's a bit early to be saying that. So we have touched on this already, but our transfer policy in the Jenkins era, pretty much players aged 22 to 24, all on 2 years 2-year contracts. Do you think that that's going to be sustainable without kind of bringing in additional experience on the side? So I really like our transfer policy. I put in our chat that I think we only had one player between the age of 22 and 24 when the transfer window opened. Everyone else is falling either side of that. And now we've filled it with 7 or 8 of those. In a book called Soccernomics, they look at how Lyon approach their transfers, and they sign players aged 20 to 24 in general, and they try and sign them to long contracts. The reasoning behind this is that by 20, you are physically mature and you hopefully will have got enough experience to break through into first-team football, have played first-team football to allow scouts to properly assess how good you'll be. And by signing players before they're 24, they're not going to be at their peak yet, so their wage demands and asking price won't be at its peak, and then you're able to sell those players when they reach their peak in their mid to late 20s. And that is the Lyon model. They've operated that way for years, and they've been very successful and made an awful lot of money doing it. The issue with experience, I think, is you create that experience. If this is your long-term strategy, your 24-year-olds now, in 2 seasons' time, as long as they make it in the team, are going to be 26. They're going to have 2 full seasons of League 2 football, and then they will have 80-odd League 2 games, and they'll be your experienced players. And when you buy your next lot of 24-year-olds, they'll have your previous crop as their kind of old heads in the dressing room. And if you just keep recycling that, then it's kind of an ongoing thing.
Yeah, I mean, I agree exactly with that. It's the smart business model is to do what we're doing now. I saw no issue with that. The second part of Kieran's question is the interesting one. Is it sustainable without that balance of experience in it? Clearly, in time, some of those inexperienced players gain experience. And so, 2-3 seasons into that strategy, it's not a problem. The problem is now at the kind of start of that revolution. And I'm going to throw ahead a little bit because there's a question further down the list from Sean, who asks specifically about wingers and says, does the calibre of wingers worry anyone else? Spellman could be decent, but he's basically coming in having had a few unremarkable spells in non-league to essentially being the first choice. Moving to wingers and not signing any proven wingers is crazy to him. So my point is this. I don't have an issue with us bringing in young, up-and-coming, promising players. I think that's exactly what we should have been doing for a long time. I think you do need experience in some core parts of the pitch. Now, not necessarily in the creative midfield areas, which is what Sean's question was about. But I do think we need some experience within defence. We've got that. We've got the likes of Clark and Jameson. We also need an experienced midfield enforcer. And that's the bit I think we're missing at the moment. I look at that list and I see a lot more creativity in midfield. Fantastic. I'm well up for that. But what we don't have is a grizzled, experienced, 4th division, break his nose twice a season, stop the opposition playing sort of midfielder, a Joss Labadie, if you will, who can do that role. And that's something where you can't come in and do that when you're 21. You need to be in your late 20s, early 30s, and to have that little bit of know-how, that little bit of S-housery that we always talk about. And so it's just in some of those few areas of the pitch where I do think we are slightly lacking in experience. And if there was one thing that I could get for an early Christmas present between now and the season kicking off on the 10th of August, it would be not Joss Labadie, but a Joss Labadie alike. And right on cue, Jack has joined the call. Let me see. Who's going to be your like back in the day at Spitty Park midfield enforcer that you're gonna demand we bring out of retirement?
Oh
Wayne
God.
Turk.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
Wayne Turk. Yeah, the Wayne Turk of Josh Labadie sort of style play. I can't better that. He was class, wasn't he?
No, he wasn't.
But everything was class in those days. That's the golden era. But do you know what? I was having a fireside chat, if you will, in a pub about how the average age of footballers is just going to gradually decrease, right? The quality of youth is getting better the younger they're being blooded in. I'm happy to try some youth centre midfielders. I'm happy to see if it works.
And just to touch on Rhys's point about the age thing and the recruitment policy, there's a really interesting article about Villa this season and what their strategy's been. Every player bar one they bought in this season has been between 22 and 24. So it's quite interesting that, we're not the only ones looking at this, are we? We're just trying to do it at a different level. There is risk to all of this, but that, it's risk and reward, isn't it? And we for years have been going along with cloggers and all the rest of it, haven't we? We tried something a bit different with Rowbury, successful for a while and then not. So that this is going to be the challenge, isn't it? When it starts going a bit wrong, and I think there's an allusion to this in one of the questions, isn't it? What's plan B? And things are not going to go right. It's not going to be a smooth carpet ride. There's going to be absolute bumps in the road here. I think part of our job as supporters is exactly that. We need to support this process. We need to get behind the team. We need to not turn on them. There's a lot of young players here. We need to help them through this. We've got a role to play here, I think, as supporters as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as fans, maybe understanding a bit of grace period, help these young players develop. Look at Will Evans' first season at the club. He couldn't buy a goal. And then all those chances that he was rushing and snatching and hitting over the bar, he scored in the first game last season and he basically didn't stop. I think time is kind of something we can grant these players to prove themselves. So moving on to the next question, talking of buying a goal. Nigel Dutson asks, can we club together to buy Jeff Cott a goal? I think one might open up an avalanche. I'm not sure I agree with him on that bit. Having seen the clip of the sitter that he missed in one of the friendlies, even I would have scored that one.
Better to miss him in the friendlies.
Better to miss him in the friendlies, exactly.
It's an interesting one, the Jeff Cott, isn't it? Because somewhere there was a player in there, and if we didn't talk about him as having one of our experienced players. So I know he's still relatively young. He has got goals at this level and goals at League One, right? So he's a bit of an enigma, isn't he? Because there's definitely a player there, Welsh under 21, all the rest of it. At the minute, we're not seeing it, but like we just talked about patience across the board. I think there could be goals in there because something says to me there has been, and he's not over the hill. So we just need to try and unlock that and find a way that works for him.
It could just be a confidence issue at this point. He might just need one to go in off his arse or off his elbow. It doesn't matter.
Cliche alert.
So the next question we got from Paul and Smelly Alan Partridge. If this current approach doesn't come off, what is plan B? I have an idea, and it might be that giant trialist that we saw starting up front at Dundee.
Well, if you think that Jeff Cott missed a sitter, the one that the giant trialist missed at Barry was as bad, if not worse. But yeah. So I saw this question, and basically this cuts to the heart of what in the back of my mind, worry is going this season, because I think there is a danger that plan B might be that we just keep doing plan A and hoping for the best and saying a few more Hail Marys. Like I said earlier, I'm well and truly on board with plan A, signing young players, keeping the ball on the deck, trying to play good football. I think is great. My real concern is that if we don't get off to a good start, we could find ourselves in the same kind of position that we found ourselves under Rowbury. And then what happens? Because when we sacked Rowbury, we had the board took the very pragmatic decision of, right, let's just bring someone in who can get us out of trouble, be pragmatic and get us over the line, which is what they did. Jenkins clearly is not going to compromise on what his style is, especially having got us to this point. If we do end up making changes, and I'm not saying that, we would sack Jardim if he didn't sign the season well, but, if we did at some point have to make a change for whatever reason, we'll clearly want to stick with someone who will be an exponent of the same type of football and the same strategic approach, because that's the whole kind of Jenkins plan, which doesn't leave you a lot of room for manoeuvre. And so I do think it's really integral that we get off to a good start, that the players without the experience can build up some experience in a side that's performing well and all the rest of it, because it is the lack of a plan B from what we've seen and heard so far that I think is just slightly, in my mind, as a bit of a worry, because we don't have those senior pros in the dressing room in the same number that we had in seasons gone by, where if they need to pull up a few of the youngsters and say, you know, these standards aren't acceptable and all the rest of it, let's draw on our experience to just S-house our way to a few points here and there. We haven't got that. So, yeah, it's quite a high-risk strategy.
I suppose we have to play to that strength of bringing on youth if that's Nelson's quality, and clearly that's the direction we want to go in. Realistically, I know we haven't got much of the bones of the squad from last year, but I think, you know, in the group chat we were talking about how many points we were off playoffs and how many points we were off relegation. We're not too bad. I much prefer the idea of, you know, governments have got 4 years to do a plan. Managers have got until their worst game, and the players get on their backs and lose the dressing room, right? I want steadfast leadership to install a plan and enact it to exactly as they have said and stated, and very, very little do we have that, because, you know, spines are very crumbly when it comes to long defeat streak. I'm of the mind, let's stick to the plan, trust the process, trust the process, trust the process. I'm happy to see it.
I can't follow any of that. You guys have summed it all up. Do you know what? It's not going to be dull, is it? No.
Okay, so final question from the listeners. We're going to be playing a different style of football to last year. If you could pick one team style from any era, what would it be?
Oh, this is a great question. Well done, Stu.
I would love to see us sign 38-year-olds who used to be, you know, cover models on magazines like Dean Holdsworth, and just boot it in from 40 yards with the class that he has. You know, let's just go back to those days. Just play some proper Sunday football, you know. I'd love that. But I'm a realist, right? So whatever it takes to get into the playoffs for League Two, I want a smart team. I want a mature team. But we need to be pragmatic and mix that in with the realities of the league. There are some difficult physical sides here.
Go on, Ian.
Well, I've got a side. Never mind about Jack's waffle about piece and bits together. There is a side and there's a style I want to see play. The best team I've ever seen that could express itself. 982 Brazil, right? That is the team. Zico, Socrates, they played football to the rhythm of the crowd. I've never seen anything like it before or since. Yeah, they lost in the quarter-final to Italy in a classic 3-2, but one of the greatest games that's ever been played. If younger people have not seen it, get yourself on YouTube and have a look at that. 82 Brazil, Spain World Cup. I'll have some of that, please.
On a similar note, I'm going to go for like 1970s Netherlands, because I like the idea of us in, you know, the 10 years since Terry Butcher of going from total bollocks to total football. I think that could be quite good fun.
I mean, it'd be nice just to see some football with like an attacking emphasis. Apart from our Rowbury spell, we've had a good chunk of Flynn and then Coughlin on a don't lose the game first footing. That's always been our primary kind of state. Apart from the start of the Rowbury era, where we went, let's go and win this every game, and we played front foot football, I'd be happy with that. Predictions. I'll start with you, I think, Ed. Where do you think we're looking at finishing this season?
Well, I'm gonna start. Last season, I drew an analogy in my preseason prediction by talking about the Raggy Dolls. This season, I'm going to talk about the Albanian communist leader Enver Hoxha, just to keep you guessing, because it feels.
I am loving that reference. I don't know where we're going, but bring on obscure communist dictators. Let's have it.
So it feels to me as though every pre-season, when we're making predictions, we have to be super depressed and realistic about the heavy grind that is ahead. And if you go back to 1967, when Enver Hoxha delivered his New Year message to the Albanian people, he said, "This year will be harder than last year. It will, however, be easier than next year." And it does feel as though that often is the approach that we have to predictions. It'll be It'll be harder than last year, but by God, it won't be as bad as the year that's to come. This year, unusually, I think Newport County, whilst we do need to prepare for a year that will be harder than last year, we don't have the same amount of experience. We are clearly a work in progress. We are going to be, building the train track whilst the train is in motion. I do think that by the time we get to the season that follows, if we can stay up and build the foundations, I think once you get into the 2025-26 season, things could start to look up, because then the plan is in progress. But I think this year is going to be another slog. And let me throw one stat at you, because I really do think it is about how well we start this season, because we've got a lot of easier fixtures in the first 6 weeks. Here is my stat. We don't play in the league a side who finished in the top half of a league last year until the 21st of September. All of our games up until the 21st of September are against sides either who finished in the bottom half of our league or who got relegated from the league above. So we're not playing any side with momentum until Barrow away on the 21st of September. So I think we need to chalk up some good early wins, get the momentum going, get the confidence going. If we can do that, like we did last season, then I think we'll be okay. If we don't do that, that's when we get into the territory of what's the plan B that I was talking about earlier. So with all that in mind, my prediction is, drumroll, 20th.
Just want to pick up on that point about easy games or not. Our first home game against Donny, who might have finished below us, or can't remember where they finished, they're on a right roll. They brought a lot of good people in. There are a lot of people's tips to go up. So I think that's a really hard game for us at early doors.
They had a really good run in the last season, didn't they? Didn't they narrowly? I thought they narrowly missed out on playoffs, Doncaster, after we spanked them 4-1.
Yeah,
on our first game last season.
You're right. You've spoiled my stat. I've just looked at the table and realised that actually I've got that wrong. So that's spoiled it, hasn't it? Yeah, Doncaster finished 5th. Apart from that, my stat was great. So much for my homework.
But that does prove a point that, we beat Doncaster 4-1 and they looked dreadful and we looked fantastic first home game of last season. And they finished 5th. So early season form, a lot of these teams, just like us, have almost an entirely new squad and anything could happen. I threw this in the group chat that we were 15 points off the playoffs. That doesn't seem insurmountable to me when you consider that we lost 23 games last season, which is one more than we lost in the Great Escape season. I can't see us, I hope I don't see us, lose any more than that. I really think that we should. We're returning with a core of players that, when we were talking about in our end of season review, a lot of the top players that we picked out from that season were the players who were returning. So I think we've got a core there of players that have played well for us in the past. We've brought in a lot of new additions around them, but I think we've got a platform to build on, and I think we will do better than last season. I reckon we'll finish 13th. I'm going to go for an optimistic 13th there. Ian, I'm going to throw it to you next.
Yeah, I think one thing to bear in mind for this season is I don't think the division is as hard as it was last season. We've got rid of your Wrexhams and your Stockports and people throwing a lot of money around. That's not to say there's not still, money being spent at this level, Gillingham, Chesterfield coming up. But I think, Cheltenham coming down, Fleetwood coming down, Morecambe, Bromley coming up. It doesn't feel as tough. Could be the famous last words here. So I think the division's a bit easier. And until we went on that crazy run at the end of the season, we were, after the Wimbledon game, we were like, we could get in the playoffs. It's crazy. Is our team wildly weaker or stronger, or is it about the same as last year? I think we've probably got. One of the things at the end of the season, we said we want some more legs and more pace. I think we've brought that in. So if we can ally that pace to a bit of football with some pragmatism along the way, which we're going to need, it might not be as doom and gloom as some of the pre-season merchants are talking about. So I'll take Rhys's 13th and go 12th.
Jack, last but not least.
It'll be mid-table, I think, again. There will be plenty of dysfunctional teams to fill up the bottom half, as it always is at lower league football. But I do have faith, based on the groundwork that Hugh has evidently shown, that we're going to go in the right direction. The trick is, I'm a bit worried that it's too young too quick, and we're going to be found out. And I think I'm going to pitch my flag I'm going to get in trouble for this. I'm going to go 9th. I am going to go 9th. I think we're going to find our way. I think I'm blind faith in this plan that we're just going to inject vim, vigour and youthful fury.
That's very good. Can I just say, because we've got predictions from Jack of 9th, Ian of 12th, Rhys of 13th and me of 20th. Can we just allow a pause here so that if I can get a voice note from Jamie, so if you're listening, Jamie, we'll go live to you in the Finnish sauna now.
Yeah, tough one to answer really without seeing any on-pitch action. It's a complete upheaval of management, recruitment, philosophy and playing style, but I love what's coming out of the club. I think it's a big step up to get all of the off-pitch stuff working so well, so quickly, from ticketing to the training pitch. Those kind of things lay the foundations, and then you just have to trust the philosophy, really, and the process. League 2 football isn't full of cloggers and hoofball anymore, and I'm positive we can outperform where many might put us given the relative lack of experience in the squad. So I'd take 15th, but I wouldn't be surprised, and you shouldn't be surprised, to see a top half finish.
Excellent. We are going to quickly whip round with Will. Will Evans still be here when the window closes? We'll start with you, Jack.
Nope. Sell him. Let's make money.
Ian?
Yes.
Ed?
I'm saying no. I think I'm going to be optimistic. I think we will have a good start to the season. I think Will Evans will score some goals, and I think therefore someone will take a punt on him in September. So I think Will Evans will go.
I'm going to say yes. I think he'll still be there. So we'll split down the middle. Shout outs. I'll start with you, Ian, because you have had some positive things to say in the chat in the last few days.
I have. We talked about trust earlier. There was much gripes last year over the ticket shambles for priority games, particularly the United match. Jenks and trust members were saying this is going to get sorted behind the scenes. The first test was the Cheltenham game. Really clear communication of what the priority order was going to be and how it's going to work. They have clearly merged the trust and the season ticket database, so that when I went on this morning to get my ticket, no problems at all. Didn't have to do anything. It's all sorted. Got my ticket, no drama. It's a starting point. They said they were going to do it. They've done it. And this goes back to this whole building the blocks, doesn't it? And building a better club. So that worked really well. So hats off. Well played.
Really quick one from me to the club for the freeze in matchday prices for this season, which, you know, everyone seems to be sticking their prices up across the board for stuff at the moment. And those of you like Ian who bought an away ticket for Cheltenham will be paying £26 for the privilege of 4th Division football. And in that context, I think the fact that at Newport County you can buy an advance ticket ahead of the day for £21 for the terrace, £24 for seats, I think is pretty reasonable. So well done.
Are we on to beefs? Don't be beefy. Have a lovely summer. It's the summer holidays. It's warm. It's 30 degrees. It feels like 40 in this office. Enjoy yourself, and then we'll have the first game of the season. We'll get drubbed for free, and then you can have your beef.
Right, go on then, Ian.
I'm not a beef.
You can let loose. You've been saving this.
I'm going to keep it short because we could have a whole episode on this. Obviously, football as an industry sold its soul a long time ago, and there's only so much some of us can put up with it. But already, the fixture changes as a result of the new Sky Plus deal I'm sick of it already, and it drives me. It's driving me nuts. I know I'm just one fan. It doesn't matter. Do you know what I mean? I don't have Sky. I would have no intention of buying it. But there's limited games I can get to. You know, I sit down and plan those at the start of the season when the fixtures come out. Plan how I'm going to get there, trains, all this sort of stuff. And then, all right, they're giving us a bit more early notice now. You know, and they start shifting about. You know, Bradford moves to a Monday night. The Notts County game gets pulled forward. So it starts messy. So the few games I can go to have got to start getting messed about more and more. And it's just like, I'm going to try not to moan about it through the season. I'm just saying it now. It literally boils my, I just don't see who gets anything out of this. I know the club gets a bit of money, but who on earth out there is interested in watching Newport Chesterfield on a Friday night?
Apart from the people who'd be going to that game anyway.
Who'd be going to anyway. So we should either just scrap the whole 3 o'clock thing and just have you stick them all on live at 3 o'clock, because the fans who are going to go anyway. But making people from Chesterfield schlep to Newport on a Friday night is madness. It's madness. I could take my money and give it to someone who actually appreciates an activity where they actually appreciate me going. And if football doesn't want my money, at some point I'm going to turn around and go, that's the end for me. And this is probably the start of that. It drives me nuts. I will never mention it again.
you will.
By the same token, I have a beef with the fact that, we're all being told about how wonderful this whizzy new TV deal is. But as far as I can work out, the option you've had for the last God knows how many seasons of paying £2.50 to be able to listen online to BBC Radio Wales commentary is gone. So those of us who, I either want to be at a game or listening perhaps to the radio commentary. I have no interest in watching a game on a laptop-sized screen. Like, that doesn't hold any appeal to me. But I would like to be able to listen to the commentary while I'm, doing some work or doing stuff in the garden. That doesn't seem to be there anymore. And I live about a mile outside of the FM reception for BBC's Newport signal. So I now can't listen to the commentary, and that feels like a retrograde step. So fans seem to be getting worse service under this great new deal if you want to listen to radio.
There we go. I've not developed any fury over anything yet. I'm taking Jack's positivity into the season. Yeah, I've got no beefs at this point. I'm sure I will when the first photographer sits in front of the clock at Ronnie Parade, but
it's only a matter of time.
All right then, on that cheerful note, we'll wrap that one up. So thank you to my panel members this evening, Ed, Ian and Jack.
Brilliant stuff.
And thank you all for listening. Until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, and most of all, keep it county.